Faith and Homosexuality. In Afghanistan, under the Taliban, the official punishment for homosexuality was execution by the tasteful method of burial alive under a wall pushed over on top of the victim. The crime itself being a private act performed by consenting adults who are doing nobody else any harm, we again have here the classic hallmark of religious absolutism. My own country has no right to be smug. Private homosexuality was a criminal offence in Britain up until, astonishingly, 1967. In 1954, the British mathematician Alan Turing, a candidate along with John von Neumann for the title of Father of the Computer, committed suicide after being convicted of the criminal offence of homosexual behaviour in private. Admittedly, Turing was not buried alive under a wall pushed over by a tank. He was offered a choice between 2 years in prison, you can imagine how the other prisoners would have treated him, and a course of hormone injections which could be said to amount to chemical castration and would have caused him to grow breasts. His final private choice was an apple that he had injected with cyanide.
As the pivotal intellect in the breaking of the German Enigma codes, Turing arguably made a greater contribution to defeating the Nazis than Eisenhower or Churchill. Thanks to Turing and his ultra colleagues at Bletchley Park, Allied generals in the field were consistently, over long periods of the war, privy to detailed German plans before the German generals had time to implement them. When Turing's role was no longer top secret, he should have been knighted and feted as a saviour of his nation. Instead, this gentle, stammering, eccentric genius was destroyed for a crime committed in private which harmed nobody. Once again, the unmistakable trademark of the faith-based moralizer is to care passionately about what other people do, or even think, in private.
The attitude of the American Taliban towards homosexuality epitomizes their religious absolutism. Listen to the Reverend Jerry Falwell, founder of Liberty University.
AIDS is not just God's punishment for homosexuals, it is God's punishment for the society that tolerates homosexuals.
The first thing I notice about such people is their wonderful Christian charity. What kind of an electorate could, term after term, vote in a man of such ill-informed bigotry as Senator Jesse Helms, Republican of North Carolina, a man who has sneered,
"The New York Times and Washington Post are both infested with homosexuals themselves. Just about every person down there is a homosexual or lesbian."
The answer, I suppose, is the kind of electorate that sees morality in narrowly religious terms and feels threatened by anybody who doesn't share the same absolutist faith. I have already quoted Pat Robertson, founder of the Christian Coalition. He stood as a serious candidate for the Republican Party nomination for president in 1988 and garnered more than 3 million volunteers to work in his campaign, plus a comparable quantity of money, a disquieting level of support given that the following quotations are entirely typical of him.
"Homosexuals want to come into churches and disrupt church services and throw blood all around and try to give people AIDS and spit in the face of ministers. Planned Parenthood is teaching kids to fornicate, teaching people to have adultery, every kind of bestiality, homosexuality, lesbianism, everything that the Bible condemns."
Robertson's attitude to women, too, would warm the black hearts of the Afghan Taliban.
"I know this is painful for the ladies to hear, but if you get married, you have accepted the headship of a man, your husband. Christ is the head of the household, and the husband is the head of the wife, and that's the way it is, period."
Gary Potter, president of Catholics for Christian Political Action, had this to say.
"When the Christian majority takes over this country, there will be no satanic churches, no more free distribution of pornography, no more talk of rights for homosexuals. After the Christian majority takes control, pluralism will be seen as immoral and evil, and the state will not permit anybody the right to practice evil."
Evil, as is very clear from the quotation, doesn't mean doing things that have bad consequences for people. It means private thoughts and actions that are not to the Christian majority's private liking. Pastor Fred Phelps of the Westboro Baptist Church is another strong preacher with an obsessive dislike of homosexuals. When Martin Luther King's widow died, Pastor Fred organized a picket of her funeral proclaiming,
God hates fags and fag enablers, ergo God hates Coretta Scott King and is now tormenting her with fire and brimstone where the worm never dies and the fire is never quenched and the smoke of her torment ascendeth up forever and ever.
It is easy to write Fred Phelps off as a nut, but he has plenty of support from people and their money.